Hello everybody, so in today's episode of Vintage Thursday we are back in the workshop and we're going to be working on a little part of a Massey Ferguson 35 tractor. Dates from 1959, got the 4-cylinder standard 23C engine in. Today we're working on the back end, and what we're going to do, we're going to change the oil seal in the PTO selector shaft. So this is the side plate from the side of the transmission housing with the lever that you engage and disengage the PTO in. Okay, so central position is disengaged, upwards towards the seat, puts you into engine PTO speed. You go back through neutral, down towards the ground, gets you into ground speed PTO, and again click back to the center. Oh, there we go, for neutral. So in behind this, so there's a shaft running through the plate, and here where it comes through is an oil seal and it's leaking. So what we need to do, we need to pull this. So this is just a big split pin in here which isn't right, so we're going to take that out. This lever comes away this way, then the rod comes out of the casting. We need to be careful because in this top section is a spring and a detent that acts into holes in this sector here, and we need to make sure that doesn't disappear, because that is what clicks. That's what we just heard clicking to hold it in the correct position for all the speeds. So first job, we will pull this pin out and dismantle it. And then here we have the new seal ready to go in, just a little tiny one. So let's get going. Okay, so we need to remove this split pin. In there should be just a standard straight pin, and what we then do is we will burr the ends over and stop it coming out. So we'll pull this pin out. He's a little bit tight, he just wants tapping. The lever then simply pulls off to reveal our shaft, and in just in there is our old seal. So this is where we need to be careful. Turn over, gently pull it out, and here you can see is the detent with a little spike and the spring. So that's what we need to be careful of. Now we can just pull this apart. So we've now got all our component parts. So that's scrap, and all this needs to be reused. So we'll quickly take this over, give it all a good clean, and come back and start by removing the old seal. Right, so fairly simple, just to pop the old seal out. Big screwdriver. Just be careful you don't damage the aluminium casting, because we don't want to be damaging that. Try a different, smaller screwdriver. That one's a little bit too big to get in behind, so okay, just starting to move a little bit there. You have to work him around a little bit at a time. him around gently, and out he pops. So this is the original steel cased seal with the leather innards, and you can see it's just age has got to it. So we'll go and clean out our recess where we've just got that from. Okay, so I've got all our parts cleaned up. We will take our seal out the packet and just check for size. So that's going to press in there nicely and fit onto the shaft. We won't put it on because we need a bit of lubrication on there, but it's the same as any other oil seal. You need to make sure the side with the lip and the little spring goes towards the oil. So this will be outside and the side with the spring will be towards the oil to provide the seal. So we just need a little tiny one like this. Should be able to pop this in with our fingers. Just make sure it goes in square. Just work it round. Okay, we just give it a little tap just to make sure it's seated evenly all round. It's still a little bit high there. Just feel with your fingertip. That's a nice even. It's very slightly under the surface, but not a great deal. Okay, so we'll put a little bit of just clean oil onto that seal just to make sure we don't turn it inside out as we push through. Need a bit of lubrication to make sure the shaft just pops through that seal, and then a little bit on the end, a little bit on the shaft as well. And then we need to make sure we get everything lined up. So we need to line up towards our detent, put the spring in. Make sure the detent goes in the right way with the point towards our lever and the squared off shoulder into the spring. It just sits into there, and then don't lose anything. Gently push it together. A little twist in motion as you go through the seal will help it. And there we go. You can see in the back of there, maybe, the detent acting into the little indentations in the back of here. So hopefully you can see just inside there is the detent pushing against the indentations, which is going to give us our selection of the three different positions for the lever. Okay, so we have selected neutral in our selector, and we will line our lever. And that line, you probably can't see down through there, but the hole in the two levers lining up. Instead of that great old split pin, we've got a nice new steel pin made especially for the job. Just made that up on the lathe. So that is a tight fit into the lever. Get our hole Get our holes lined up and gentle tap to just leave a little bit proud each side. So there's a little bit there each side. What we will do, we will hammer that to burr the ends over, and that will then hold it all tight, stop that pin coming out. Okay, so we'll just use the vise as a makeshift anvil, and just burr the first side, turn over, it's no good, I can't go left-handed, and do the same again, that side. That should give us a positive gear selection or speed selection, and that pin is now securely held. That's never going to fall out. What we've done, we've swelled the ends to very slightly fill the hole up in the actual lever, so that's a good firm fit on there. Okay, so in order to reinstall the side plate, what we need to do is we need to just clean off all the old gasket from the sealing face, and we're just going to give it a light rub it over with a bit of wet and dry paper, just to get that nice and shiny. Make sure we get a good clean surface to seal. Wet and dry, just make it a little bit wet with a bit of oil, a little light oil, and you get a much better surface and no dust, which is most important. So we'll just give it a rub round. Just being careful, making it wet, and being careful we don't get the dust going inside, which is what we don't want, because our hydraulic pump is in there. We don't want dirt and dust getting into that, but we'll just be damping it down and not having it swimming in oil. It just doesn't, all the wet, all the dust and anything you rub off doesn't go inside and contaminate our pump. And then we'll just give that a rub, get that oil off. And you can see we've got a nice clean surface there to take our gasket. Okay, so before we install, we'll just take a quick look inside. So this is, get me out of the way, so this here is the PTO engagement gear. Okay, so that is in its neutral position, where it's free, the shaft turns freely. Okay, so in its central position, it's in neutral. To engage engine speed PTO, we slide it over the PTO drive shaft, and that engages engine speed PTO. Okay, to engage ground speed, we go back through neutral, which is here, free spinning shaft, to engage the big gear on the outside of that collar with the gear on the diff input pinion, and that then gives you ground speed PTO. And then come forward again into neutral, so the wheels can turn with no shaft turn, and also the pump output connected to the engine turns as well. Right, so we're ready to install now. So we'll take got our new gasket, which fits between the two parts. So first off, we'll just run a little smear of gasket sealer around the face to make sure we've got no leaks, and it also holds the gasket in place while we put it together. Just helps things out a little bit. So you don't need much, otherwise it only squidges out and goes to waste. And we don't want it squidging inside and getting caught up in our pump. There's no filter in these. They didn't put filters in the early ones. And this being 1959, it's not a particularly early one, but there's still no filter in the pump. Okay, so we've got our smear on. We will line up our holes. And then we will just put another light smearing on. Okay, now this is a tricky bit. So we've got our lever engaged into neutral and our gear inside into neutral. So we need to feed it in, line up our holes and get the internal lever engaged in the gear. Fix the cover back on with 6 bolts. One of which is longer than the rest. And that one goes here to take the footplate bracket. So we can get 5 of them in, and then we need to move the lever to get the final one behind. Check our movement. So before we install the final bolt, we're just going to show you a little nerdy fact that you might find useful one day. So these side plate bolts are the right thread to fit into some tapped holes in the brake drums. So if you come to take your brake drums off and the retaining screws, you can get the retaining screws out, which is quite often a bit of a task. But if you get the retaining screws out and the brake drum still won't come off, if you screw 2 side plate bolts into the 2 tapped holes here and here at 90 degrees to the screw holes, that will then should jack the drum away from the half shaft. It doesn't always work. You can strip the threads out, but it's there, it's worth a go. You know, if you can't get your drum off, it's certainly worth a try. Just screw a couple of side plate bolts into your holes and it should press it off. Right, so nerd fact over. We'll put the final bolt in. Just do them up equally around the circumference, just to make sure they're pulled in square. And then just go around once more just to get them to the correct. There probably is a torque figure for these bolts, but just, you know, use your common sense. You want an oil tight seal, but you don't want to be going so crazy as you damage stuff. So we've put this one in for now just to make sure the gasket seals up and sets properly. But this one here holding the foot plates will be coming off again in time while we're cleaning ready for paint. But we'll put it in for now just to make sure that seals up properly. And we'll check again for movement. That's all fine. So we'll go to neutral. So we are currently in neutral and the shaft spins independently of everything. We push into ground speed and we just align the gears, and there we're into ground speed PTO, and then we engage engine speed by sliding forward over the shaft. At the back of the pump, that is always, while the engine is turning and the clutch is engaged, this shaft is always turning. And go to the back of the middle just for neutral, and the shaft turns independent of anything else. So obviously it wouldn't be turning either when we're moving, because this would be turning, or the engine running, because this shaft here would be turning. Right, so there we go, this little job completed. So next in line for this project we will be working on the top cover, getting the top cover put back together and put back on. Although that's a little way in the future, but it will be coming up. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel and stick around for more Vintage Thursdays. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.